Welcome back. The Gary Sutton Show on WSB. I was just saying about Amy Ridenour. Read that article, nationalcenter.org. And after you read it, check the things that people consider to be voter suppression, and you will be shocked. I think she's listed like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 things. And they don't have the voter ID thing in there, okay? So check that out and see what you think about it. And give me a call. Give me a call or send me gary.sutton@cumulus.com or facebook.com/910WSBA. I want to go to a cold Supreme Court and Capitol. Both are just kind of across the street from each other, by the way. So if you've never been to there, there's a nice big lawn in there. And I'm sure that my friend here, Jeff Coleman, with Churchill Strategies, along with his daughter Anna, are standing. Hello, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, good morning to you, Gary. We're on the approach, the big bus, and spirits are high, and looks like it's going to be a beautiful day in D.C. Despite the weather, we're cheered and encouraged.
Jeff, you wrote a piece. It's going to appear, I think, today in the Patriot News, sometime today, if people check it, or sometime later this week, possibly. But you and your daughter Anna, I think I remember this is your second year going down there. Am I correct on that?
It is, yeah. I'd gone when I was younger, and then really hadn't been back for many years until Anna was 7, and she's 8 now. And had really been asking as she would get hints and learn about how fragile life is, and how many really of her classmates never made it to the first grade or the second grade because of this tragedy. She really wanted to get involved, and it reinvigorated and reignited my desire to be a part of it.
Yeah, you've been talking. I was interested. You talked in this piece about some of the reasons you didn't go over the years, even though you felt it was something you should be doing, but you saw it as a more strategic thing during that time. When I talked to you last year about this, and we have talked now, it seems like you're there for an entirely different reason. There's no strategy involved. It's more from the standpoint of going down there for this 41st annual March for Life and letting people know that there are people out there that care about the unborn.
Yeah, well, one thing that is so interesting, first of all, the number of young people there, that 50% of the people at the March for Life today will be under the age of 18. And that is really a dramatic shift. We know that demographically, young people are becoming increasingly pro-life. Look, the technology, YouTube videos, Google, Siri on my iPhone, everything to the, I don't know if you've been online, everybody has been forwarding these pictures of elephants in the womb this week. We know what this is, and wanting to be a part of what feels like a historic shift towards life, and knowing that everybody who is at that march today is going to tell a neighbor why they were there. Everyone who sees somebody at church or the soccer game, hey, where were you yesterday? It's at the March for Life. Right. It has a huge ripple effect through communities of saying, look, we're turning in a direction that is really positive.
Now, I heard what Governor Cuomo said the other day about if you're anti-abortion, there's probably not much room for you in the state of New York. There's that feeling by some around the country, if we watch the mainstream media all the time, and they say, well, it's the law of the land, just the way it is. And you even point in the article, you say, does an old-fashioned singing, praying, sign-holding march past the Supreme Court have any possible impact on public policy? Even with a record 500,000 spilling out in front of the Capitol last year, wasn't every decision in Washington, including those in an ideologically hardened Supreme Court, a foregone conclusion? So there will be a lot of people that say, why would you do this in the coldest part of the year?
Oh, man. Yeah. Look, at every major movement in American history, whether it was the abolition of slavery, whether it was the first set of laws to protect unborn life, which happened in the 1800s. We have always had some form of abortion, legalized abortion in America, until really the states began in the 20th century to enact, in the late 19th century, to enact laws protecting life. It wasn't until Roe v. Wade that all of a sudden the issue was not settled, the science wasn't settled. The justices decided to lower the curtain between what was actually happening, calling it the wall of privacy, and the citizens who said, look, we're still wrestling with this issue. Technology is like it did in the civil rights movement, in slavery, and so many other movements in history, there comes a point where everyone collectively says, "Uh-oh, I think we've gone too far."
Right.
55 million is not rare. It is not rare, and so that's why all of a sudden you see a growing youth movement, high school students and college students waking up saying, "I think we messed this one up." Look, it's the same group, same demographic, Gary, that is saying, "Hey, why do we have laws against marijuana?" Or why, why do you, Jeff Coleman, and others support this old definition of marriage? They're questioning everything, and there comes a point in society when an issue like this is just going to be unquestionably wrong.
I was watching some of the activities yesterday in the 41st Annual March of Life that they're having in D.C., and there was one number that jumped out at me as one girl was talking about all the friends that she never had because 1/3 of her particular group was wiped out by abortion. And it really just, it hit me. I never heard that number, and I was stunned.
Gary, what we're realizing is that, look, when my wife is pregnant with our fourth, and there's a little part on the form when you go to a doctor's office now that talks about reduction, meaning if you have triplets or more, which child do you want to eliminate if you think it's going to be an unfair burden, or it's going to be difficult, not for health reasons necessarily or medical reasons, or you can argue certainly emotional stress, but kids are waking up and saying, "Why, Mom? Why my sister and why me?"
Right.
And those, what you'll hear now at the March for Life today is a huge focus on adoption, saying, "Look, you could have chosen adoption, Mom and Dad. Couldn't you have done this?" So all of these questions are finally coming to the surface because you have a generation of kids like my daughter that just aren't accepting, hey, that's private. That's mommy and daddy talk. They're poking through that wall very quickly.
I'm going to get to what your daughter has to say here in just a moment, because innocence in the eyes of a child always is intriguing to me. But, I'm a guy that believes that life starts at the point of conception. And I believe that it is then a life in progress. And to disrupt that life in progress for any reason is pretty tough. And yet, I'm one of those guys that wrestles with, and I think there's a lot of people that say, well, gray area is when I don't like the answer. If it's right or wrong,
right.
That's a gray area. For me, there are a few gray areas in the world, and one of them happens to be in this issue where life of the mother, incest, rape, those are the things that I would wrestle with in terms of, okay, that person has already gone through a hellish thing. Do we take that choice away? And yet I say to myself, you hypocrite. How can you be in favor of life and yet wrestle with that? Help me with that a little bit.
Well, let's first of all just take that issue.
And I think with the adoption thing, that kind of brought that to mind today. But go ahead.
Yeah. No. Let's take the real sensitivity surrounding rape and incest.
Right.
And the rare case where a mother's life is in danger, which the medical community has said is, we're talking about perhaps 1% of the 55 million abortions that have occurred in America. So when you move the discussion to the 99%, then we have, I think, real room for common ground. But let's take the two victims of rape, the two victims of incest, the two victims of a crime against a woman, and the two traumas that occur. What we have begun to do in society now is say, because of the way you were conceived or brought into the world, or because of the circumstances, we're going to put, let's say, we're going to make your life worth $1.25.
Right.
But this unborn life, because it is not fully developed, hasn't been around long enough to make a case for self-defense.
Right.
That child is going to have about a nickel value. And that's what we're doing. We do that with people out of the womb, old people, people who don't contribute to society. So, well, wouldn't it be better if we hear the Planned Parenthood folks from the earliest days talking about, wouldn't it be better if African-American families didn't reproduce? And that was the founding principle of Planned Parenthood and the eugenics movement. That's, let's craft a society of healthy, contributing people who get the best educations and can contribute to society. That's when we get into this gray area and say, I don't know if your life, because you've been alive, is more valuable. Mother's life, preserving the mother's life, is, I think, in every standing from your view of God, your view of humanity, we're going to protect the mother's life. The question now is how a child is conceived. So many contributing members of society were not conceived in ideal circumstances. That's when adoption really becomes a loving choice.
Yeah. Your daughter, Anna, I'm sure she doesn't get into all the politics. You're a guy that's been around this game for a long time. You've been a state representative. You actually were a guy who lived by what you said in terms of term limits. You've been a strategist. You've been around. But I was reading in your piece here, your daughter doesn't see things that way. She basically looks at something, and again, this was the point I think you made in the article, it was really good, that she studies the instant ultrasound printouts and the videos now. You listen to the early heartbeats of the tiny unborn brother or sister on your laptop.
Yeah.
And those weren't around during the time of Roe v. Wade. So there are some changes now that certainly have added something new to this whole conversation.
Well, it's interesting. The same technology that's available to view life is the same technology that is currently used in abortion clinics in Pennsylvania to end and terminate a life. So you have the promise of technology being, as in every case, you could take it to gun rights and that argument of self-defense or hunting or the wild abuse of it. We're at a point right now, though, where this generation is in a second going from the ultrasound to Facebook to Twitter to emailing long videos of a 60-second stretch of film of a baby sucking his thumb. We just had this last week with this ultrasound. My mother-in-law has been very happily sharing all of these videos. Oh, look there, he's sucking his thumb. Oh, look there, he's doing this. and there's no ambiguity about it. We can count the number of fingers and toes. We can see the heartbeat. You can see eye sockets. And then, now that's just with a plain old vanilla ultrasound. You go into the mall or some of these other places where you have 3D and 4D ultrasound.
Yeah.
The window on what's happening is no longer a secret. That's precisely why the Planned Parenthood and other abortion-on-demand advocates have been saying, well, it's not about life anymore. That's not the question. The real question is quality of life, or whose life is more valuable.
Right.
So they're saying, this isn't about, they're not even saying pro-choice anymore or safe, legal, and rare. They're saying it's complicated,
which is a really slippery slope to get ourselves on. But when you said something about your daughter, so I can imagine a child sitting there looking at these ultrasounds now, looking at the pictures of the future brother or daughter or brother or sister in the womb, and then all of a sudden along comes someone and says, we've decided that we're not going to give you your brother or sister.
Yeah.
And I said, how do you, Mom and Dad? They were alive. I see all that stuff in there. You just talked about. How can you do that?
Well,
it's a simplicity look.
Talking to the ultrasound attendant the other day who was helping us at Hershey, and she said, do you want to know the gender? So of course we want to know the gender. Is that because we want to name our baby now,
exactly,
so that we can really begin to have the baby a part of the family. And she said, well, you realize a lot of families are not happy with it. It becomes an explosive issue if they got the wrong gender. Somehow, with this idea of designer families, beginning in Hollywood and other places, say you pick the number, choose the time, choose the place, when it's the most convenient, when it's the best. Instead of saying, boy, God does something amazing when he brings into being a new life, and he really changes you. He changed me from being a very selfish, ambitious, self-directed person to being someone that has to then get up at 2 and 3 in the morning. It is not convenient. Having babies is not convenient. It wrecks your life, and I'd rather be talking to you than changing a diaper.
Exactly.
But that's the reality of this design.
And by the way, it is up on Penn Live now. If you want to go to PennLive.com, the title, it's underneath opinion. Here's why I'm taking my daughter to the March for Life, Jeff Coleman. So there you go. Jeff, you note in your piece here that in 1977, Jesse Jackson said something before he ran for president. He said, Human beings cannot give or create life by themselves. It's really a gift from God. Therefore, one does not have the right to take away through abortion that which he does not have the ability to give. Great statement. I don't know if Reverend Jackson still believes that. I hope he does. But certainly one that I think a lot of us can agree on.
Well, Gary, it's kind of interesting because Jesse Jackson, along with Ted Kennedy, George McGovern, Hubert Humphrey, really the leaders of the Jimmy Carter, all of them spoke out very forcefully against abortion. It was not until it became a litmus test for Democrats to run for political office. And really, the Governor Bob Casey was the last major national Democrat who had any kind of access to the microphone, and famously, of course, was cut off at the Democratic Convention in 1992 for expressing a dissenting view. The logical outgrowth of the social justice, human justice movement is the pro-life movement. And very, very clear to me that if Democrats would take a very close examination of their principles, especially folks that are arguing for equality in other forums, the gay rights movement, for example, they cannot be making the same arguments about human equality in one arena and deny access to human rights and equality in the most basic.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. You said something a little bit ago about naming the unborn child, and I suspect that a lot of people don't like you to do that because when you name that, all of a sudden you have a named being as opposed to a fetus, a piece of flesh.
Well, there's a piece that I referenced in the article at Salon.com, a really articulate abortion rights activist who said, look, I believe that when I'm having an abortion, I am taking a life. Let's not argue about that anymore. They know that technology has changed the view about life, and so it is not going to be a stigma any longer to call a baby a baby. When someone is pregnant on a program on TV, when someone is pregnant in real life, we don't say, well, hope your fetus is okay. What's the fetus's name? We don't speak in these abstract terms about a precious life. And the pro-choice or the pro-abortion or reproductive rights movement, whatever the new name is today, recognizes that. We're beginning to have a more honest argument about abortion. Yes, there are complexities. Let's talk through those complexities in a gracious, measured, balanced way. We can have this discussion like we do on very many complicated issues, but what the other side has done for the longest time is cut off the microphone, saying we're just not going to talk about it because this falls under the privacy curtain. Well, we talk about hip operations, we talk about all kinds of other serious medical procedures, heart transplants. We watch them on PBS. This isn't a discussion that if this is just a medical procedure, this is an issue that we should be having as an American family, a serious, gentle, honest, gracious discussion about. And
when people, I've often found that many politicians, when they say we want to have that discussion, it usually is code speak for we absolutely do not want to have that discussion, unfortunately. Jeff, it's been great having you with us this morning. Thank you so much. I hope people read your piece on Penn Live. We'll have the sound up today for this particular segment at facebook.com/910WSBA. Would ask you all to react, and I hope you and your daughter, and there's so many down there today, truly celebrate life. I mean, having a father-daughter moment has got to be super.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's a real pleasure.
Jeff, always a pleasure to have you aboard. Thank you so much. Jeff Coleman of Churchill Strategies with us here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. When we come back, Tracy Brown joins us. What's she telling us about? Body language. How can you tell from some of these politicians that they're lying? Well, they open their mouths. But I don't think that's what Tracy's going to talk about. She's going to give you some insights you can use in regular life at 11.